It's the new year, 2023 has come and gone, but 2024 means the sequel to the best VR game of all time. VR Hot 2. Into the Radius, even when I completely burned myself out on it, has been and always will hold a special place in my wacky gamer brain. Its seriously addictive gameplay has always had me entertained, even if the environment was more depressed than a suburban mom fantasizing about f***ing Kyle, her son's football coach. But there's plenty of you out there that hit me with the you've never finished Into the Radius due to either it being difficult or you're a bucktooth baby bitch and too scared to continue. Well, I can't help with your bucktooth problem. Who am I, your dentist? I can help with the survival aspect as the guy who has only finished one time, to be fair. I just don't see a reason to loot the castle. I'm not scared, bro. I promise you. You gotta believe. So we're bringing it back to the basics. Bringing it back to the Red Bull addiction and the binge playing this game like no other. How the hell do you survive in Into the Radius?
I would define mensch as like just an eater or somebody that's like a...
Have you ever received a massive headache thanks to the default head strap on the Quest 3? Well, I can't help with the squeakers and Gorilla Tag giving you that headache. Let me help you with Zyber and their Quest 3 accessories that turn the Quest 3 into an actual comfortable headset you'll want to use. With their head strap, not only do you get the support of the back of the head strap, but the rigidity of the top strap also giving you good weight distribution on your head. But Viewey, I play my Quest until the battery explodes on my face from charging it every 30 minutes. I need a battery strap. Oh boy, let me show you this super sick neck battery bank that doesn't force you to constantly have the cable near your head if you're not using it. But what if I play so much Beat Saber I get early onset carpal tunnel? Billy Mays here, Zyber VR again also has you covered. If you're interested in any of these products, make sure to use my affiliate link below. And of course, thank you to Zyber VR for sponsoring this video. So here's how we're going to do this. I'll be rating each map not only on their difficulty, showing you enemy hotspots and where to be prepared for a fight, and what loot you'll need depending on the area. So without further ado, Perv is like receiving artistic pictures from an e-girl on Twitter. Easy. Obviously, the starting area in any game is going to be easy, unless you're Elden Ring. There's a reason I refunded that game. I'm not hating, I'm just being a bitch. Perv route is overall a walk in the park once you're properly equipped with the basically nothing you'll need to get started. The most equipment you'll need is some sort of firearm, food, and optionally, it's nice to have a health shot or two. Aside from that, you won't need anything crazy. My only real recommendation for Perv is to upgrade from the Makarov as soon as possible. This is made easier when you realize there's a Glock sitting on top of one of these water towers in the motor depot that's protected by like 3 dudes and one of them strafes like a Call of Duty player. But don't think that Perv is useless. There's a ton of loot scavenged around that can make your life in the Radius that much easier. The train station will probably be your hardest area to fight in. There's a couple different policemen with firearms in this location, so be prepared to fight back. Once you take out the ops, this is the best location for finding artifacts, which I can't stress how big these are to find. Having this artifact locator is the best way to earn money in the Radius. All in total, there's a few big spots to hit in Perv with very little on the oppressive front. The areas marked in green will give you the best loot without many enemies, yellow will give you good loot with some force against you, and red, which we'll talk about later. But aside from that, Perv is as easy as it gets in the Radius. It ain't much, but it's honest work. That meme has not been relevant in years. I don't know why I wrote it. You can't keep getting away with this. Baki is the swamp you don't want to visit. My name's Shrek and I got layers on your... The equipment for Baki is a little more than you'll need in Perv. This is where you'll most likely want to have a primary on most of the time, with the sidearm carrying you in the one-on-ones outside of the main areas. There aren't any enemies with armor, so no need for any AP or plus P ammo. But I would highly recommend a silencer, given that if you're near the 2 main enemy areas, you'll hear that gunshot and you'll be spotted. So a silencer is recommended. I would say to use SS, but given that it's a massive waste once we move out of Baki and onto Factory, you should stick with a silencer. This is where I highly recommend bringing some sort of food with you. Given that once you're out of Perv and if you move straight into Baki, you'll be desaturated and won't be able to sonic the f out of some of these buildings if things get too heated. Don't get me wrong, this isn't Costco. Don't go Ron Chris on me, but you should bring some candy bars or a can of food or two. In terms of loot to enemy ratio, not the Twitter term, you should definitely stick to the main areas of Baki. Nothing really crazy stands out in terms of side loot. Most you'll find is some grenades or ciggies, but if you stick to the big 2 areas, you'll find all the loot you'll need. Also, there's this tower near the entrance to Factory that more than likely has a weapon at the top. Quirky fun fact, I've played this game too much. Again, the green areas are mostly free of enemies. Yellow means there's a lot of enemies but good loot, and red meaning it's not really worth it to go grab the loot that's there. Baki isn't really the best for finding loot to begin with. The biggest area of notice would be the big building in the corner of the map. This gives you a pretty good amount for what it's worth, although expect to use your primary most of the time in this area. There's a lot of armed guards, a lot of spawns, and a lot of artifacts waiting inside. But this isn't even the big one yet, because we still have to talk about...
I have the best advice for women in business. Get your f***ing ass up and work.
Factory is the biggest challenge you'll face, especially when you first get there. This area is full of hazards, enemies, and most importantly, loot. Of course, it's going to be dangerous, but the amount of loot that you can secure from this one map is actually insane. Don't get me wrong, the loot required here is not something to go easy on. Whenever I go to Factory, I'm bringing mags full of AP ammo, my armor is on with full durability, and I'm bringing 5 med shots, and that's the light bag. Especially with the big building near the entrance to Perv being full of enemies, and the loot being completely hit or miss if it's actually worth it depending on what the tide spawns. spawns. If you go towards the end of the map, this is typically where you run into the most trouble. And if this is your first time here, you can find an AUG on the top of the truck near the far end sniper tower. The big building is where you'll find the most loot. There's a few different spots for these weapon cache boxes to spawn, so I would look in every corner you possibly can. This is really where you'll find some of the better items, like these Einstein head-ass sensors I don't remember the name of, and the occasional weapon you can keep or sell. Overall, this is one of the best maps to find loot. Baki and Perv will get you somewhat far, considering there really isn't a whole lot of enemies, mostly artifacts and the occasional shotgun or SKS. With Factory, you'll mainly want to stick to these areas again in green, with slight trouble but worth the loot in the yellow areas, and again avoiding the area in red. This area near Kolkhoz typically doesn't get a whole lot, only main thing being an artifact or the occasional AK spawn, but nothing super crazy for the massive amount of enemies that spawn here. But with that being said, my biggest piece of advice: stay the f away from Kolkhoz. This map has basically nothing to offer you. Because of the BTR, the massive amount of snipers and armed guards, and the sheer lack of just fucking nothing to give you in terms of loot, you'll finally get rid of all the enemies just to get a Mosin or a health shot you'll use immediately, since the sheer amount of enemies will have you gasping for air like an OnlyFans model after a long days of work. The village isn't worth looting besides the one mission that you're actually here. The big building isn't worth looting besides the one mission you're actually here for. And guess what? That's the only reason to check out Kolkhoz. So why visit Kolkhoz? So basically, once you meet Bowser and you have to jump behind him and drop the floor, you beat Into the Radius. I can't wait for the sequel. Wonder what they'll do. Into the Radius will cement itself as one of the greatest VR games to date. Perv, Baki, Factory, all great maps to gather some loot to finish the story or just to become the best player in the Radius. Thank you to our mega rich patrons, A Stupid Artist, Retro, Tor Willem, Wes, Cammy, and Only Mints. And of course, thank you to our budget-friendly patrons as well. CM Games, please let me play Into the Radius too. I'll sign the NDA. I'll sign my right pinky toe away. I'll tattoo a picture of Katya on the palm of my hand.